That is good news, isn't it? Isn't it great to have good news? I heard that the next mortgage you're going to pay is mine, so I'm really happy. I really am. I appreciate that. You guys are so kind. Talk about an honorarium. Oh, I tell you. No, that's excellent news. We're excited. That means there's a lot of good things are going to happen when you're not. Oh, apparently I'm done. Be blessed.
Thank you for preaching, my brother. I forgot to dismiss the children for Sunday school. God bless you, all the kids and teachers who can make their way out for Sunday school. We do appreciate you and love you and forget you. No. Wow. Thank you, Al, for telling me. I was so excited about the mortgage. Bless the Lord. I'm sure the kids could have stayed in and enjoyed the sermon as well, but the teachers have something prepared. Sorry about that, Paul. God bless you.
I'll get right to it this time. I promise. But I was thinking about how mortgages and churches get paid. You know how they get paid? They get paid by a bunch of people just doing what they can and God blessing it. You don't have to be a superstar. You don't have to be rich and famous and powerful to pay off a church. You just have to be faithful in what you've got and watch God do amazing things with little. With little. And we're a testimony of that in Charleston. Our church just built a new building for our youth and kids program. And it's a big number, but with the help of the Lord and some givers who just give what they can, we're going to have that paid off in about 6 years. And so God's really blessing us as well. And isn't it great that God blesses everybody, even Americans? Isn't that amazing? I don't even understand that sometimes, but just kidding. My wife is American and my children are, so I love Americans. I'm going to preach a message about the unnamed and unknown people. There's a bunch of them in the Bible where you see people in the Bible come up and they don't have a name, they don't have a title, you don't even know where they come from, but they do something great. And that speaks to me because I'm from a small town of 1,200 people. 1,200. That's right, not 12,000, 1,200. Very small. And we're just outside of Bangor, Maine, and it's very easy to feel like you're unknown and unimportant. Because, you go visit somewhere in the South and you say you're from Maine and you say, was that Canada? They don't really understand that Maine is part of their country at times. So it's very easy to feel that way, and then it can get in your head and think like, well, I'm not as important as this person or that person, so really what can I do? But it's great that God puts these things in the Bible to show us that we don't need a title or a name or a huge following of people. What we just need is faith in our God to see great things take place. So everybody in here has a purpose and a plan no matter where you find yourself. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask a question. Have any of you guys ever met a name dropper? Who knows what a name dropper is? Yes. I was speaking to Pastor John about name droppers, and he told me, yeah, I hate it. I was talking to the mayor yesterday, and he's such a name dropper. And it's just like, that was a name drop there, in case you didn't, But it's the people who go out of their way to tell you in some crazy way in their story of the famous people they know so they can feel important. You're just talking to someone like, oh my, I can't believe it. I was just having coffee with George Clooney, and he wore that same shirt. It's great. Is this little rash here too red? I was talking to Hugh Laurie, who plays Dr. House, and he said it was fine. He plays a doctor on TV. It's just, they're funny people. I've met some, and they go down a laundry list, like six lines of words to conversation, and like 15 of those words are people's names. And you're just like, okay, guy, seriously. I know who they are, but who are you? But that's what a name dropper is. And you know why people name drop? I'll tell you why people name drop. Because everybody wants to feel important. Who here will be honest with me and say, I would like to feel important? We got a humble church today. Praise the Lord. People like to feel important. I like to feel important. I love it when people come running to me and say like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I got this, guys. I got this. You go here, you go there, I'll go there, and then we'll give God the glory. And it's fun to feel important. It's fun to feel like you're valuable. But people look for lots of followers on Twitter. They want to have a huge following like Lady Gaga and her poker face. Is that what it is? I'm sorry. John told me to do it, and I'm bad at that kind of stuff. I'm not good at that. That was an epic fail. That's what that was. That was horrible. But you see, people like to do things to feel like something more than just a small blip on a blip of 6 million people. Just a small blip on the radar of the world. In your small little corner of the world, we want to feel like we're valued. And if you would be honest with yourself, everyone would say, I want to feel valued. I want to feel like I am valuable, that I can do something. Well, what we just heard today proves that every single person in this church is valuable. Because that mortgage couldn't have got paid off without faithful people, no matter if you're rich or poor, known or unknown, faithful people giving of what they've got to see this happen. And people want to feel that valuable. And people who feel like they're unknown and just don't, their name doesn't matter and their life doesn't matter, just simple living people, don't think in the grand scheme of things that they are valuable. And it's sad because it makes people just kind of loathe going to work every day, punching the clock and, living for the weekend. And that's just not God's best for us. And that is not God's best for you or myself. And I've come today to inform everybody in this room who can hear my voice that there is not one unnamed and unknown person in the world. Because the eyes of the one who matters looks at you and says, I know your name. He says, I know what you've got going on. I know where you hurt. I know where you're happy. I know where you're sad. I know where things are going right and when things are going wrong. I know every hair on your head and lack thereof. I know it all. I know it all. And you see, when you look at the world and you think you're just a small fish in a big ocean, we are small fish in a big ocean, but how many know that Jesus is the one feeding us, and Jesus is the one covering us, and Jesus is the one overshadowing us, and he knows every one of these 6 billion faces in this world, including yours. So you may feel small, you may feel unknown, unworthy, unwanted, but God wants you, knows you, and makes you worthy by what he's done on the cross. We have a good God. We have a good day to be alive today. And today I want to show you the impact of what an unknown person can do in the world. An unknown person can change the life of all kinds of people just by being faithful to what God's called them to do. So the impact of the unknown, and I also want to show you the impact that God can have on the unknown, on someone who's just living life. You might have come here today with no connection to God, and I want to tell you that God set you up to be here today. God set you up to be in his presence, to hear his word, and to know that you have a future. He set you up to be here because he cares about the unknown, the unwanted, the unloved, and the normal people, the people who are just happy, the people who are sad, the people who are rich and poor. He cares about everybody here today, and we're going to show that today in the Bible. So we're going to look at 2 stories in the Scripture. 2 stories, and they're filled with miracles. They're filled with very important people, very important prophets. And of course, they have some unnamed and unnumbered people as well. So if you have your Bibles, turn to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 5. We're going to read from that about a very popular story that I grew up hearing my whole life. And to be honest, it wasn't until recently that I noticed another character in the story that was very important. And I'll read it to you right now. So as the pages turn, I'll keep talking so you can finish turning your pages and find 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. If you've got it, say, I'm there. All right, that's enough. Let's read it. The Bible says, the king of Aram, or however you pronounce that, had a great admiration for a guy named Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. Now, this story is about a man who was not one of God's people, who wasn't a Jewish person, but he was very blessed by God. The Bible says that he was used by God to bring victory to his people, to his kingdom. He was a brilliant military leader. He was tight with the king. He was the guy who could name drop. Me and the king were chilling the other day. He could name drop because he was it. He was the big guy on campus. Naaman was it. He had a serious problem, though. He had something called leprosy. And we all know from Sunday school, leprosy is a bad thing. Especially back then, it eats your skin. It eventually kills you, makes you unclean. You can't be part of society. It's just bad. But this guy was like a really prominent guy. But he had no hope. And the king couldn't do anything about it, even though the king loved him. The king wanted him to continue to live and continue to do his exploits, of course, because he was the greatest army commander they had, but he had leprosy. And there was nothing that could be done for this guy. But there's another person in the story that often gets overlooked because we hear about Naaman from the Sunday school. Oh, Naaman went down to the water to dip. Oh, Naaman went down to the water to dip. We hear about Naaman going down to the water to dip. And he dipped, and he dipped, and he dipped, and he dipped. all his sins were washed away. He's been redeemed. It's a Sunday school song for those of you who don't know that. We hear a lot about Naaman and going to the water and his encounter with Elisha that comes up next. But there's no song about this one person in the story. There's no song about this other person. There's no writing about it. There's no talking about it in Sunday school. There's no flannel graph person of this little girl. Who? I said flannel graph. Do you know what that is? Okay. You looked at it and you were like, flannel graph? I thought maybe that was so passé that you didn't. And this little thing, the Bible says at this time, the Arameans, raiders, invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives, look at this, was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. You see the story about important people with important problems also includes a very unimportant person with problems that no one cared about. Why? Because she was just a slave girl. She was taken from her home. She was taken from her parents. She was taken from everything she knew, from her faith, from everything, and pulled away and placed into the home of someone she didn't know, that was an enemy that had raided her land, to be a servant. Just a slave girl. Just a slave girl. So unimportant, church, that she was not even given a name. We don't have her name. We'll never know her name. It's not on record. It was an unnamed little girl. A bystander in the story would look at the players and put little faith and little attention to a slave girl, because you have a king, right? You have a prophet, you have a commander in the army, you have all these big guys, and then you have this little girl. This little girl who doesn't seem like she could do anything for anybody because she's just a little slave girl. It's all about the king. It's all about the prophet. And you might look at your life and say, it's all about him. It's all about her. It's all about this guy. It's all about the guy on TV. Look at me. I went down to a church in North Carolina with my pastor for a convention, for a little conference, a one-day conference. He's 32. I'm 30. His church has 11,000 people in it. And I'm like, I'm awesome. You know, you just look at it and you're just like, it's very difficult not to feel unimportant in those moments. And they weren't being jerks. They weren't being mean. They were pouring into us. But it's hard to sit in that crowd of people and see all the things they're doing and all the things they're reaching and look at your life and say, is it even worth me doing anything? Because, just because I'm a pastor or I'm in the ministry doesn't mean I'm immune to feeling like I'm lousy. Matter of fact, it happens a lot. We're not immune. No one's immune to it. And when you see people getting blessed and see people moving forward and you thinking, man, I wish I could do that, but I'm stuck here, we can feel like that little girl in that story, unnamed and unimportant. But God has so much more for us than that. So much more than that. How often do we look at the problems and cares of the world and think, what can I do about it? What can I do about it? I'm not important enough. I don't have enough influence. And really, who really knows my name in this world? What can I do about it? The girl was taken from her home. She was truly unknown. And we will never know her name. And we're going to get back to her. I want to tell you about another unknown person. So if you got your Bibles, just flip over to the book of John, chapter 6, verses 1 to 9. Just flip over there. We talked about an unnamed girl, but now we're going to talk about an unnumbered boy. An unnumbered boy. Say unnumbered. Unnumbered boy. I mean, this is even more of like a dagger to the heart. You're not even numbered, and this is why. The Bible says after this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he said, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. And Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed these people." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. He said, "There's a young boy here with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But what good is that in this huge crowd?" What good is that in this huge crowd? A dilemma came up in this situation. They were surrounded by this lake, the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus was so awesome because he's just awesome. I mean, one word describes Jesus: awesome. That's who Jesus is. He's amazing. And because he was so amazing, signs and wonders followed him, healing the sick, raising the dead, and his words were so powerful and full of faith and full of truth that thousands of people gathered. People were drawn to him, and they came in droves to find him. But as the day grew on, people started getting hungry, and Jesus asked the question, why don't we feed them? Can we feed them? Why don't you feed them? And we know that Jesus already planned to do a miracle, and the disciples, the important people, didn't really see a way that they were going to feed all these people. How are we going to do this, Jesus? Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to pay for it. They were trying to fill a spiritual need with their own natural resources. But Jesus was about to do a spiritual thing that he didn't need all of our natural resources. He just needed our faith. And when we go through things in life that drag our spirit down and make us feel lousy, make us feel like we can't do it, we often try to fill that with physical things, fill it with trying to become more popular, trying to become more famous or more prominent. Maybe even we get a little arrogant, we get a little pride, we want to get a little bit more money, a little bit more money, when all the time Jesus is saying, stop trying to fix it and just come to me. And trust in me. Give me what you've got, and I'll make it great. And this little boy, this unknown, unnumbered kid was there, and he was so unvaluable at that moment that he wasn't even numbered in it. Why? Because 5,000 men were there with Jesus. They didn't count the women, and they didn't count the children. So this little boy, who sparked something so miraculous, was not named or numbered in this crowd. How small and little, how much more small and little can you get than that? You see, this little boy wasn't numbered, and he was overlooked. I mean, if you read through the scriptures about how kids were treated at times, Jesus was blessing little children, and the important disciples said, get away from him. You got runny noses. Get away from Jesus. He doesn't have the time for you. And Jesus said, stop it. My kingdom is for people like this. My kingdom is for people who will be crazy and just give me everything and serve me like that. That's what my kingdom is for. It's for the unnamed. It's for the unknown. It's for the people who realize, I can't make it on my own. It doesn't matter if today you're driving a main car, which is a rusted out pickup truck with a gun rack in the back, or you're driving a big, huge Cadillac Escalade with the big 20 spinner rims, It doesn't matter what you've got today. When you begin to realize that you can't make it on your own, that's when you begin to get breakthrough after breakthrough, because you realize he is your source. He is your source, not what we can accumulate, not who we can tell what to do, not how much influence we have. We find our source in Christ, and that's when we find breakthrough in our life. This little boy was a great inspiration to us. You see, God doesn't overlook those that are overlooked. God never overlooks the overlooked. So when you feel overlooked, just tell yourself, I'm not overlooked because God's looking at me. This boy was not overlooked. God takes time to create people. Psalm 139, 13 and 14 says, you made all the delicate inner parts of me and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Every person who hears me, every person who's breathing and alive in this world right now was knit together in their mother's womb by the hands of God. That tells me that there is no one who's not named. There is no one that's not numbered. There is no one that's not worthy of what God's done, because he made us worthy, because he chose to love us. He said, I love you no matter what, so now you're worthy. Come to me. Come to me. When we try to do it on our own, that's when we find mistakes. That's when we find that, things get a little rough. That's when we find the glass wall that we can't break through. That's where we finally get bitter and frustrated and angry, broke, busted, and disgusted, as it were. But when we give it all to Christ, we begin to realize that, you know what? It's all about him. It's not even about me at all. The cool thing about these stories is that the stars really had to take a back seat to the no-names. You know those movies like Glory Road and Remember the Titans and all of those movies that are really good about the underdog? No one gives them a chance, and then some crazy thing happens and they play and they have these cool moves. I used to be able to quote them. It was awesome. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy, Gary? Who's your daddy? It's great. I loved it. So good. And these movies about underdogs, people gravitate. Why? Because there's always times in our life we feel like an underdog. Who here has felt like an underdog before? We've all been there, and maybe tonight you feel like an underdog in life. Like, man, how am I going to get through this? But you see, the reason those movies inspire us is because we look at it and say, like, I could do that. I may not be able to dunk 10-foot rim with a spin move, that's for sure. I can barely jump 2 inches. But I can do things that may look impossible for me to do now, because I have someone that nothing is impossible for. I have someone that absolutely nothing is impossible for. And you know what else is good about God? Nothing is impossible for God. It's two different things. Nothing is impossible for God, and nothing is impossible for God. You're saying, what is wrong with this kid? He just said the same thing. Nothing is impossible. There's not one thing in your life that God can't bring you through. And nothing is impossible for God. It is impossible for God to do nothing. He is always on the move. He's always moving forward. He's always doing something for the unnamed, the unknown, the unwanted, the unworthy. He's always doing something. Sorry, I'm going to fall over that thing. Let's just do that. That's better. So if we continue the stories, let's see the impact that a nobody had in these stories. In Naaman's story, his fortune was up. Everything that he had worked so hard for and strived hard for and bled over was finished because he was going to die. There was no cure for it. He was going to be thrown out, cast aside, maybe live in seclusion the rest of his life till he died. And it took a captured slave girl to change his future. It took a girl who simply said, in the presence of her owners, not her family, not her friends, her owners, I know in whom I believe, and my God is faithful to bring me through this. So I'm not going to get bitter. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm not going to get upset with the world. I'm going to trust in my God. Hey, Mr. Naaman, sir, master, she called him, master. There's a prophet in my nation named Elisha that if you go see him, you will be healed. You will be healed. Simple. Never hear from her again. Not once again you hear from this little slave girl. But she spoke words that resonated forever. Thousands and thousands of years ago she said these words, and they're written, and it changed a prominent man's life because she simply said, I know someone. I know someone. Sometimes that's all it takes for you to rock a world. Someone hurting, someone in need, and you just look up to them and say, I know someone. I know somebody that can do something about what you're going through. I know someone. And then we see this little humble girl who's broken, who had no home. She might have been scared. Give everything to God and say, just take it. I know someone. And then we watch Naaman go, and Elisha probably wanted to make him, be humbled a little bit, sent his servant out. And his servant said, go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. And Naaman almost missed it. Why? Because he was so arrogant and so proud that he didn't want to do menial tasks from a menial person. It was all about the little people. It's realizing that when you trust in God, it doesn't matter if you're the president or the prime minister or if you're just someone who sweeps the floor after a basketball game. If you trust in God, your words will carry weight no matter where you go. That's the power of God. That's the power that God can put into the unknown. Finally, Naaman decided to do it, and we know the story that as Naaman came up after the 7th time from that water, his skin was as clear and beautiful as a baby's skin. It was perfect because a small girl who was a nobody chose to believe in her God that he was able, and that changed someone's world. I want to tell you that doesn't matter how you feel today, your God can change the world around you through you. Through you. And he can change your world as well. The 5,000 fed, this boy's resource. The boy's resource was very small. It was very humble. It was 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That couldn't feed this crowd. Unless we all took a crumb and went hungry. I don't really much like raw fish anyway, but whatever. We'll call it, Pastor Ward at my church always calls this a tuna fish sandwich, just because we know tuna is a great church meal. Those sandwiches that are going to come, they're probably going to be tuna. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it's going to happen. So this little boy had just a little lunch, not very much to offer, right? But what were the important people offering? Excuses. I can't do this. I don't have enough. I. The little boy said, this is what I've got. You can have it. That's the difference maker. The difference maker in your mortgage is because people said, this is what I've got. It's not much, but it's what I've got. And guess what? Another person did the same, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. And year after year, this happened. And guess what? The mortgage is gone because little, seemingly unimportant people in Dartmouth, Cole Harbour, I almost said Cole Harbour, Maine. That is horrible. It's scary. And Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, decided to take their little resource and give it to the one who can make something great happen. Not excuses, not why I can't. This is, I'm giving it to the one I know who can. So when this little boy gave what he could to Jesus, Jesus saw that this boy had an unwavering faith in what he was going to do. You see, this little girl story and the little boy might have been unknown, might have been unnumbered, but they lived with unwavering faith in who their God is. So it doesn't matter if you're known by the world or not. If you have unwavering faith, you are known by God, and He is going to change everything because of your faith in Him. That's how God works. Hallelujah. That would be a good point to say amen. I felt that. That was good. Yeah. You see, to be an effective believer in Christ, it's not dependent on your influence. It's dependent on His influence. It's dependent upon what He can do with what you give Him. And if you're willing to give Him what you've got, doesn't matter if someone else gives more than you. You give, and God uses, and you get blessed, and the world around you gets blessed. Think of the widow's mite. Think of the widow's mite, church. She was a nobody, unnamed, unloved, broken, outcast of society, without hope. Big priests were coming in, and rulers were throwing bags of money into the offering, bags of money. And this little widow gave the equivalent of half a cent to just put it in. And Jesus says that woman gave more than anyone else because she gave all she had. And that woman, that widow has been used in sermons, teachings and preaching for a long time to encourage people like us who may feel like we don't have quite as much as the Joneses down the streets do, to realize that what we have is enough. That what we have is enough, and it can shake the world. I'm gonna kind of bring this to a close. So Heather, is he gonna let you leave? Come on up, just okay, just go. If he cries, then run back. See what happens. Oh. That's my little boy, Zach. He's 4. No, he's 3. He's something. He's somewhere between 1 and 6. That's where he is. Somewhere between 1 and 6. Oh man, I love it. You know, when you get it in your spirit, in your heart, that you don't have to be the greatest thing in the world, it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders in life, doesn't it? You begin to realize, wow, I'm loved by God just because of me. And when you give God everything, you realize that He's your provider. He's got your name. He's got your back. And He's going to bring you through everything you go through. The good, the bad, the fun, the exciting. And that's where we need to be today. To realize that as an unknown or unnumbered, like not famous, popular person in the world, we have a purpose. We have a reason to be here. And even Lady Gaga, with all of her millions and millions of followers on Twitter, she is an unknown person because that's a fraction of the population of this world. Do you think someone in a squatter town in Mexico City knows who Lady Gaga is? Absolutely not. They're just trying to find a place to eat. And an unknown person going over and giving that person food has just as much an impact as a Lady Gaga would, because we decide to take what we've got and give. This slave girl gave. This boy gave. And guess what? It transformed the world around them. It's okay. It's okay. You can look at me. I'm gonna bring this to a close to tell you that God cares enough about your life right here, right now. I know He's a wicked cute kid, but you can look at me. I'm cute too. That God cares enough about you in this moment to bring you here and to tell you that you don't have to keep striving for the moon. You just need to strive for Him, because He's working things out in your life. And I want to tell you that not only does God use the little guy, He looks out for the little guy. I was driving to church one night years ago when my wife was pregnant with my oldest, my daughter. We were going to a Christmas practice at church, just doing, just a Christmas practice at church and enjoying ourselves. We were young. We were driving. We drove down the Route 11. And as we got to this one point on Route 11, a deer walked on the road very slowly, looked at me, and then strutted off. And I'm like, wow, that's a really, really, really arrogant deer. Just walking up. You know, that's just the way he worked. That's how, as I'm like, I just slowed down a little bit. I have to stop, but he didn't run away, but, you know, whatever. So we kept going. We were like, all right, cool. And as we're getting to the church, there's this intersection right here where we have the right of way, and there's stop signs here. We got just about from here to that back wall from that intersection, and a car blew through it at about 90 miles an hour. Didn't even stop at the stop sign. And if that deer hadn't gotten in our way, we would have been T-boned, and my life would have been over. Our daughter's life could have been over, and my wife's life could have been over. And then that beautiful little crybaby wouldn't even be here today. But you see, God was looking out for me. That is not just a coincidence from Mother Earth. That was God seeing that I was in danger, and he put something in my path to make me. You know, we get upset when we get stuck in traffic. We get upset when someone cuts us off, or we get upset. But you don't know what God's doing behind the scenes. He cares. Next time you're stuck in traffic, just put your hand up and say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, because I don't know what you're keeping me from. You know, if we could see what God has kept us from as believers, we would be a lot more grateful to him. And we'd be moving a lot faster into his power because we'd understand that he's active a lot. I got another story for you. A good story from my church. He never says daddy. I don't, it's just not fair. Whatever, I mean, I held her hand when she was giving birth. Seriously. Oh, man, it's fun. I'm going to bring this to a real quick close. This is my third conclusion because I learned you have to have at least 3 as a pastor or else you're not really spirit-filled. This is really, really, really special couple in our family. And you know what's really good about this? It goes so well with my message because I can't remember their name. And I asked my office manager about it, and she can't remember their name. So apparently they're nameless. God knows their name. The story begins years and years ago when we first got here, and we had their kids get plugged into our youth ministry, and their oldest son kind of went away and got into drugs, but he got plugged into Teen Challenge, and my pastor's brother was in Teen Challenge, and they became real friends, and they went to my pastor's house to spend Christmas together. So this couple's son was at my pastor's house years ago spending Christmas, and the seeds were being planted in that family. Powerful. And this girl named, was it Vanessa, Veronica, Vicky, Rhubarb? What was her name? Thompson is her last name. I don't even know her name. Man, I'm really awesome. Thank you. I'm not you. And so her name, it starts with a V. She looks like Ziva from NCIS, if you ever see that show. It's a great show. But she came to youth group, and she got plugged in, and God did works in her life, and it was great. And these seeds were planted in this whole family. Fast forward to this year, and Heather went to work on a Friday. And on Friday, she gets the esteemed privilege of answering telephones. And that's her favorite thing to do. Not, said the liar. That morning, she felt different about it for some reason. I don't know why. She didn't know why. But she got in. She was on her phone. She said, Lord, use me today on this phone to just really change someone's life. In Jesus' name, amen. She honestly had never prayed over her phone before. But that day she did. A couple hours later, she got a phone call from this couple. This couple talked to her for about 45 minutes and told her everything. We tried everything. We went everywhere. We have done everything you can think of to find peace, and nothing's worked, and we want to come to church. We want something. We need something. So Heather talked with them, prayed with them, and then got them in contact with one of the most amazing people in our church named Dalton Dunphy. And Dalton is a retired businessman, and he just loves seeing people saved. Doesn't matter who they are, see you saved. And Dalton called them up and met them in person that weekend and just loved them, poured into them. These were simple people. They didn't have a big job. They didn't drive big cars. They were really, in this grand scheme of things, they would be a nobody. But Dalton gave his time. Heather gave her time. Pastor gave. You see, our whole church was invested somehow into these two people. They came to church on Sunday. that Sunday, that next Sunday. And the service, everything that was said, they said, spoke directly to their heart like it was for them. You see, God stops the world for an unknown. He stops the world for you today. If you don't know him, he stops the world to tell you that you're known. That you're known. That's who God is. And so the altar call was given, and these precious two people that I am embarrassed to say, I can't remember their name, came down front and put their hands up and gave their hearts to Jesus Christ, and their lives were changed that very moment. Unbelievable. And then 2 days later, they were killed in a car accident. You might say that God is a jerk. I say 7 years and the entire church putting everything we've got into these two people for that one weekend shows me that God cares about the little guy. That God cares about the unknown and the unnamed. Because today they're not walking, they're not suffering, they're not in a place of torment. They're in a place of ecstasy and joy and bliss that can't be described. They are in the presence of Jesus Christ for all eternity. Why? Because God cared about the little guy. And he worked things out to see them come to know the Lord 2 days before their life ended. That's love. That's power. That's beauty. That is God. That's God. That's God. So all of this tells me, all these stories and all of these realities tell me that God, there's not one person here that is unknown. There's not one person that is unknown, and no matter how broken, lost, or hopeless anyone feels, God's working to draw you to him because he has the answer. So today I want to encourage you to stop trying to figure out why things happen. Stop trying to figure out an explanation as to why it happens, because when you get your explanation, you're often disappointed. Start looking for the solution. And that solution is Jesus. That solution is Jesus. And the reason he can be our solution today was because 2,000 years ago, he lived a sinless life, broke the back of hell, death, the grave, and all sin for all time when he died on a cross and rose from the grave. And that gift is yours today if you want it. Many of us have it. If you've got it, why don't you put your hand up and say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you that I'm not unknown anymore, that I've got a name, that I've got a reason to exist, that I got a reason to be here. Hallelujah. So with every head bowed, now eye closed, no one looking around, I'm going to ask a simple question. If there's anybody here today that doesn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that you don't know this good Savior, I want to tell you, he knows you. The most famous scripture in the entire Bible says that he loved the world so much that whoever would believe in him would not perish, but have eternal life. And I want to let you know that no matter where you are in life, whether you've done 15 to life in church, you're brand new, or you've never been in church before your entire life, the God of heaven looks on you with absolute affection and love today. And you can't do anything to change that. You can't do anything today to make him love you more. You can't do anything today to make him love you less. But if you don't have a relationship with him, you can do something about that and just receive that free gift of eternal life today. So is there anybody in this sanctuary? I don't know most people I don't know here, so I'm just going to ask if there's anybody here that would say, Pastor Paul, I don't have a relationship with God, but I want one. And I can recognize that he is chasing me down today. If that's you, why don't you raise your hand? No one's looking around. I'm looking around. I'll see you. We'll pray. I'm not going to embarrass you. If there's anybody here that would say, that's me, I want to give my life to Christ and start over brand new. Just a few seconds. Hallelujah. Anybody at all? Amen. Amen. Why don't we all stand together this morning? And we're just going to sing a song of worship together, and we're going to make the altar call right now, just right in your seats, and then Pastor Carmen's going to come up and lead us in communion. But right now, I just want us all just to think about this with eyes closed, and if you feel comfortable with it, I just dare you to raise both hands to the Lord and just begin to thank him from your own heart right now. Go ahead. Just raise hands and say, God, thank you. Thank you that you've sought me out. Thank you that when I was a nobody, that you made me a somebody. When I was a nobody, you gave me a name. You gave me a purpose. The Bible says that you've been made an heir with Christ, co-heirs with Christ. That means He's gave you his name. That means you are an heir to everything that Jesus has. Everything. An heir is not someone who gets a part of it. An heir is someone who gets the fortune, the blessing of the Father. And when you're an heir with Jesus, an heir, a co-heir with Christ, an heir of the kingdom of God, you get the blessing of the kingdom of God this morning. So let's just lift our hands and thank God that he loves us, because we don't deserve it. We don't deserve to be part of his amazing family, but he made a way where there was no way. And let's just thank him. So go ahead and be a little bold and just lift your voice and say, thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you that I'm part of your family today. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Oh, we give you praise. Oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Just get that in your heart. Say, oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves. Come on, church, let's just sing that out to the Lord. Sing this. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. He loves you right now, just as you are. Let's just thank him for that all over this place and sing it one more time. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Thank you, Lord, for your love. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your love. Oh, God. Lord, thank you, Lord, that you care, God, for the unknowns, the ordinary, the plain, the average and everyday. Thank you that you love us. Thank you, Lord, that you loved us so much that you went to the cross. Lord, God, we may have been forgotten, but we have never been unloved. Lord, you have always loved us. Oh, God, we give you praise. We give you praise. Hallelujah. Just one more time. Could you folks slip your hand up? Worship him. Worship him. Oh, God. Oh, God, thank you for your love. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your love, oh, God. Thank you for your love, oh, God. Thank you, oh, Lord. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Thank you for your faithfulness. As we prepare our hearts for communion, I'm going to ask our board members to come and join us here at the front.